Any questions on these before we jump into it? All good? All right. So let's look at our first one here. Command and control versus self-organizing teams. Anybody experience this? You know, someone more command and control and rather than let the teams decide what's best. Yeah. So if we look at it, let's look at our traditional CEO versus maybe an Agile CEO or someone maybe with an Agile hat on. So it kind of looks like, fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Fixed might be, they do things a certain way because we've always done it this way here. They're always busy. They're very business savvy. Whereas, someone more in an Agile mindset is, more self-reflected. They believe in the community, working together. Let me get a better example of this. So traditional leaders versus collaborative leaders. So again, the traditional leader will believe that power comes from position and authority, where a collaborative or an Agile leader sees power as more as a collective and team-oriented type of situation. The traditional leader maintain ownership of information. Knowledge is power. I'm sure you guys heard a lot of that. Where in an Agile sense, information sharing is really where the power comes in, right? So helping each other understand knowledge is going to give you better results. Sometimes with the traditional leader, they'll listen, but not really. Whereas an Agile sense, you're more encouraged to get ideas from your team. You look for that information, you facilitate conversations, you get teams to interact with each other, and that's how you're going to get the best results. All right. So just some other examples here: deliver approved solution to their team versus facilitating, allocating resources rather than enable the team. So you guys can take a look at some of these other options. There's a couple examples that I wanted to point out. And again, with the traditional aspect, you have the top-down approach, whereas in Agile, it's more of a network and collaborative and teams working together. So that's just some of the research that I've done. Now I want to share with you some of the information that we pulled together from the community, and actually how to, get in a better situation for this particular subject. So what you need to know, one is it's a good idea to find an executive champion, someone that can help you with your Agile journey and within the, the things that so if you're coming into an organization with an Agile mindset, you want to get someone at the executive level that can help you along that journey and kind of guide you through some of that areas so that you can help the culture and teams be more successful. If you got someone on your side, then it's always helpful. So that's kind of what, this one as well. Provide air cover, a senior executive whose sponsorship, explicit permission is granted to help teams towards self-organization. Okay, next one. Business leaders, they're always interested in metrics. So if you can show some metrics that actually shows that you're improving at the team level, that's going to help you, expand it and then be able to, with an Agile transformation, be able to, move that forward. Okay. And if possible, if the company can bring in an Agile coach or someone to help at the executive level, if you're just starting out as a Scrum Master, that's always helpful. You always want to get leadership to support you from an Agile perspective. So possibly some training. Great question.
Coach, yeah, I think Bob has a question. Coach, okay. Bob?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you, but if I remember correctly, we're going to go in more detail in self-organizing teams. Is that correct? I thought that
So
was
we're,
one or the other.
yeah, so what we're actually looking at, is the first one, yeah, command and control versus self-organization. So, yeah, we can go into that a little more detail, and talk about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
because yeah,
Go
my if you want, I can wait or I can share right now.
No, absolutely, sure. Like I said, I like to be interactive, so.
Yeah, my experience is self-organizing is such a it's got multiple aspects and multiple degrees. So just because a team considers themselves self-organizing doesn't mean they are, or it means
Mhm.
they're minimally self-organizing. And it's fairly easy to tell, but I have struggled with how to encourage or promote a growth in self-organization because it is so broad and there are so many aspects of it and different degrees of it. It is a challenge in my experience.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that as well. I think probably every either Scrum Master or an Agile coach, that's, really, you know, needs to define what is a self-organizing team and how do I get that team to self-organize. Anyone else want to share any of their stories or any of their feedbacks on how they've, transformed a team from a command and control to a self-organizing team?
I can share a couple of things.
Okay, sure.
So one of the things that I've learned that helps a lot the team when you're empowering them to self-organize is working with a product owner.
Mhm.
Is providing support and letting the product owner kind of grow into the role and help the team with gathering good requirements, breaking down the items and decomposing the items into smaller items, then prioritizing the items either through the backlog or for the sprint backlog as well. That helps a lot when the product owner kind of groks what it means to be a good product owner for the team. And when they meet often to discuss, the actual work. So
Right.
this has been like key for multiple experiences I had. And so I definitely ask or suggest that all Scrum Masters work very closely with the product owner and help empower them.
Yeah, because I mean, so looking at that from what you just mentioned, like I said, these things start to come together and you start connecting the dots, right? So if you have a good product owner who has a good vision and has a good roadmap, then you're helping the team self-organize. I think you can't just come into a company and say, okay, here's my team. All right, we're going to self-organize and start running sprints. There's got to be some guidance, right? You got to help the team understand what it means to self-organize, because they're going to be kind of lost. They're like, okay, what am I supposed to do now, right? So I think that's where some training and the coaching and getting others involved and kind of identifying what an agile mindset is will really help the team self-organize. Did I get that right, Marcel? Yep. Okay.
I promised to be quiet.
Any other questions? Say again?
I said I had promised to be quiet this time.
Oh, okay. All right. I like to hear you talk, so. All right. So any other feedback? Anything we want to share about, command and control versus self-organizing teams? It's a challenge. It's a challenge for, starting out, and it's something that, I think if you keep working and have this agile mindset, do some training with your teams, look at the culture, work with the executives, see what they're to help. All right.
This is timing for me because I was just in a very difficult, crucial conversation with some leaders about why they shouldn't be in retro.
Yeah. And how did that go? Was it?
It was rough. It was rough because they're like, well, we're there to help the team. And the team is clearly very afraid of them and they won't open up. And they're like, and I was like, well, there's something called psychological safety. And they're like, you mean they won't open up when we're there? I mean, they say some things. I'm like, no, they won't be there. They take the ideas from retro and they put it on a management board and the team never sees it or acts on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that, which actually leads me into my next point, right? So let me ask you guys a question. There was a Google 2-year research project, and they looked at high performing teams. And can anybody guess what the #1 result of them, what they said is what's needed to be a high performing team? Anybody know? Anyone want to take a guess?
I would say being able, well, with the mindset that we succeed and fail together, and therefore we work together and we have each other's back. We understand each other's weaknesses and strengths. We leverage our strengths and we support our weaknesses together.
Okay, you kind of said a lot. So can you, what would you say
Yeah.
that, if you wrap that up into one thing?
Team bonding, team
bonding?
trust.
Okay, trust,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, trust is important.
I'd say psychological safety,
Okay, anybody else?
fun.
And Gail is the winner. There it is. So yeah, Google conducted a 2-year study and concluded that high performings have 5 specific traits. #1 is psychological safety, the willingness to take risks without feeling insecure or embarrassed. #2, dependability, delivering high quality work on time. #3, structure and clarity on goals, roles, and execution plans. The meaning of work, the purpose of their work is important to them. You got to be able to enjoy your work, right? Impact of work, making a positive difference on the lives of others. Interesting, huh? Now, there's 5 different, there's other aspects of team building and what's important to a team, but I thought this was an interesting study, and it goes along with our next problem statement, and that is team members don't feel safe. They don't feel they're in a safe environment. So when they speak up, they don't, feel like it's okay. So that's a huge problem. Anybody want to share a story? Like if they've had team members that are afraid to speak up, you get into a retro and everyone's quiet, nobody's sharing information.
Is Rick here today?
No,
'Cause I had an experience with him. We had a team, we were doing a transformation and we had a survey, anonymous survey, 1 to 5, how safe do you feel? And there were just 4s and 5s, and 1 being totally unsafe, a 5 being you feel safe enough to tell God to go to hell and draw him a map. Everybody was a 4 or 5. Okay, that's great. And then we got to the retrospect part. Not a chirp, not a peep. That no one was safe, and they were so unsafe they were not safe enough to say they were unsafe. That's how bad it was. That was the worst.
Yeah. Anybody else got a story to share?
Yeah, I've run into those chirping crickets quite a bit, especially in the government sector. And the indicator that you come away from there is that when there are chirping crickets on that particular topic, the engineering person or the person who should have an engineering mindset doesn't have any sort of mindset whatsoever for that the technical topic. That seems to be like the 100% rule that I've been running for the last 5 years.
Yeah, especially in, like you're saying, a government type of scenario. You know, sometimes they may not even know, like, is it okay to say this? You know, if they're working with, you know, vendors or anything like that. Okay, so
So sorry,
let
Coach.
me,
I just wanted to let you know that Walter said something in the chats. Those
Okay.
members can feel more involved by providing stickies, writing their responses down. I'm guessing this is just to avoid the crickets, maybe.
yeah, so you broke up a little bit for me, but I think I got out of it. Just put some stickies on the board and let them feel free to enter information in the sticky. Is that?
I think
What was that?
so.
Okay.
I think so because he was like, how can we? I mean, if there's crickets, maybe because they're like shy or something, and they feel more safe, or I don't know. They feel safer as they use tools, I guess.
I don't know. I've run into
Yeah,
that a lot. The crickets aren't there because they don't feel safe or because they're introverts. Those crickets are happening because it is not safe. If you speak up, you are likely to offend someone in a manager, director position because that manager and director is calling shots based upon what they heard in some vague material, and they're guessing their way through, and they don't have the engineering background to back it up. No one is stupid enough to say that's all wrong or we should try this. It's just not going to happen.
yeah. So it leads
Yeah,
back to
and
culture. Go ahead, Bob.
yeah, this also leads to one of the next points about Agile values and principles. And one is we prefer individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And these stickies are more leaning toward processes and tools, the stickies being tools, instead of the safety of being able to interact as individuals.
Yep.
So is it that we want to provide an area or a place where the people can say what they want to say without any fear of punishment or retribution? Or is it that we want them to feel free to go ahead and to actually share, their insights? Because what I have found is that in the process of sharing the stickies, yeah, they very well may be introverted because, I don't know how to say what I like to say. And then when somebody goes to clarify that, what I have found is that sometimes they'll say, oh, well, actually what I mean is, and now the conversation is now being had.
Well, that's the point of having a good facilitator for something like a retrospective, Walter, is having someone who can help the person find the way to express themselves if they have something they want to express. But I would go with C, all the above.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, there's some. Well, let me talk a little bit about this, and then there's some areas here that might be able to help good facilitation of a retros and trying to make things feel like more of a safe environment. So
Alright.
with psychological safety, teams can
There's one
experiment and
hand.
grow. They
Randon
can you
raised
guys hear me
hand.
okay?
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to share
Okay, let's go, Ryan.
from my perspective, in dealing with a different team. There's two factors at play. One, you want to feel safe, but two, you need to be engaged. If it's you feel like your opinion is not valued, or that it's just another meeting, and you got something better else to do. You're not engaged, you're not interacting. It's not going to lead to any value add.
Yep. And that's why we're going to go into retrospectives because it's another Agile anti-pattern that we're going to talk about, and it goes to exactly what you're talking about. So good question. Okay, so again, with psychological safety, we want that to happen so teams can experiment and grow. They can challenge each other. You can get more informed decisions made, right? The collaborating, and that's how they're going to improve, right? They keep, have an open mind and be able to bring things up for discussion and then to find out the best solution for either a problem or situation. Now, if they're not in a good psychological safety environment, teams are going to be reactive and hesitant to speak up. They're going to be scared to challenge, like we were saying. I think that was Walter. And teams are, they're just going to be in their status quo, right? Nothing's really going to change. All right. So some of the areas that we can do to help teams feel more in a psychological safety environment is ask some questions. Do you feel that am I included? Do you feel like you're included? Am I understood? Am I able to challenge or question? Am I able to act on decisions? So if you ask your team members if they can answer those, then you're kind of leading towards a safe environment. And like we said before, I think that was you, Bob, that talked about trust. In order to have trust, you need three things. You need to be competency, honesty, and dependable, right? So if team members can trust each other, then they should be more open to be able to say the things that, what's on their mind. Maybe we need to start small, let's get some team members to start talking and have others join in the conversation, good facilitation, like we said before. Good leaders lead by example, walk the walk, implement team values, retrospectives. Talked a little bit about that. We'll talk that more in detail. Good facilitating retrospectives. And then, we talked about applying the Scrum values, right? We'll talk about that next. And if there's too much bureaucracy, that's where good ideas go to die. So that's always a challenge, and that's kind of what leads to some of these problems. If team members don't feel like their input is heard or just goes to the wayside, they're not going to speak up. And then, do team members know what what's expected of them? So here's some other things we can look at, but probably should move on, but just some slides you can look through. The 4 stages of psychological safety, inclusion, learner safety. Employees want to feel safe and grow. Challenger safety, employees want to feel safe to challenge the status quo and see positive change. Contributor safety, employees want to feel safe, contribute their ideas, and so where they can use their talents and abilities to make a difference. So any questions, any feedback? Just want to pause a minute to see if anyone has questions on this.
So there's a question. How might a group regain psychological safety once once the trust has been broken? Yeah.
Okay. Anybody want to share an idea of how that can be done?
Yeah, team happy hour.
How can psychological safety be, or trust, how can that be repaired once it's broken?
Good question. Hold on here. Let's get a clarification. Is the team safety being broken within the team, or is the team safety being broken because of business decisions from an upper level?
Good question. Can the person who asked the question ask it? Oh, they're answering within the team. Did they have a working agreement with them prior to detecting that trust has been broken, Sherry?
Okay, within the team.
okay, if they didn't have a working agreement, that might be a good place to start.
Yeah, and it depends on how that trust was lost. If it was a single individual, the team, that
Mhm.
might be time for the team to self-organize that person off the team
True.
because they've opened up enough to be vulnerable enough, and that was misused.
True.
So that's
True
one
that.
option, but
True,
yeah.
true that, but that would probably or likely emerge during a conversation in crafting a working agreement. Would you not think, Bob?
I agree. Yes, working agreements are very
Okay.
important.
So,
You the
so the
coach.
point, okay, so digging into that, Sherry, okay, there's another metaphor for establishing boundaries, okay, and that's called the user manual to me. There are things that every person, and it's an undeniable thing, things that any person is okay or not okay with, and then there's things that I'm not too sure. Okay, every person carries innately what those are. Okay, if you get people to start talking about what those things that are innately okay, not okay, invariably some stuff is going to come out that says, I'm not sure. Well, you capture those too, but you get them all out on the table and you get everybody to talk about what they can agree is okay between them and what is not okay between them. Okay. And then go from there. The linchpin to that is that since the team owns it, okay, how are you going to hold each other accountable to this? No titles involved. No titles. Yeah, Bob putting the thumb up because he knows how I roll.
Right.
He knows about the Eagle box.
And it's so important. Yeah. Speaking the gospel, brother.
Yeah, I like what you said, Marcelo. I mean, depending on what the situation is where the trust was broken, but if it's within the team, okay, so trust was broken, maybe it was a team member, maybe it was a couple team members, whatever. You come in, you talk about it in the retro or on the side, you bring the team together, and then you build it into your working agreement. Okay, this happened, okay, but it's not the end of, the road, right? Let's build it into our work agreement. Let's learn from it and let's move on, right? And then try to slowly build up that trust. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, and the problem without having a working agreement, you really can't hold each other accountable.
And everybody does everybody know what a working agreement is? And we talked about it, but just want to make sure that people understand.
All right, I'm going to speak for someone. I don't understand. Please give me a quick explanation of it.
So I don't know who's drawing on my screen. Is that me? So a working agreement, right? It's when the team comes together and they look at the things that they all agree on as whatever item it is as a team, so that they can all adhere to and hold each other accountable.
Yeah. Can you give me a blank space on this canvas for a second, Joe?
Do you want to?
Yeah, just put some. I don't want to share my screen. I just want you to go to a clean place on here so I can draw.
Oh, okay. Like here?
No, a clean frame somewhere where there isn't. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. No. This little space will do just fine. Well, go back to where you were. That will be just fine. You don't. It doesn't need to be huge. It just need to be blank. It needs to have nothing on it, and that's all. It could actually be a blank space on the canvas because I'm annotating inside of Zoom. So if you just zoom in if you just zoom into where you are, then we're good.
All right. How's that?
Okay. That's fine. Okay. And I'm actually drawing on top of his thing. I'm not drawing on top of
Yeah, I like this.
Stop moving stuff around, please, for a moment. This is a very concise form of what I've been describing. By the way, those dots means continues. You list out your stuff, folks. What is cool? What is not cool? In other words, I do not want you to behave that way. Right? And consequences. What happens when whoops happens? Obviously, there was another one here that I would say, hey, we're going to have to talk about it later.
Yeah.
And then decide.
So what would be a example of a consequence?
Really? Okay. I've worked with teams where a lot of Latins are involved. Having to buy food for the team figures heavily. Figures heavily. We have
Sí,
other.
those are
That's a good one.
croquetas.
Hey, it's codfish croquettes. Let's get this one straight. Anyway, yeah, donuts figure heavily. Misha's cupcakes figure heavily. Then you've got some
Alright.
teams where you've got a lot of health conscious folks, and so it is not uncommon that you might have to drop and give 25.
Uh-huh.
Okay, or do some wall sitting. You know, where you put your back up against the wall and you kind of like kneel down, holding yourself against the wall, and then they time you until the team literally feels that you have paid penitence. Okay, again, it's all up to what you guys agree with. Try to have a little bit of fun with it though. Okay, it doesn't have to be any harder than that. I've literally helped hundreds of teams with this simple metaphor. And I know that Rick has too. So anyways, hopefully somebody took a picture because I'm going to erase it.
Oh,
And there it's
all
gone.
right.
Cool. Thank you, Joe.
All right. So yeah, thank you. That's a good example of a working agreement. Awesome. All right. In the essence of time, let's move on. So our next item up for discussion. Yeah, the daily stand-up is a status meeting. Anybody experience that? Daily stand-up's kind of dry. You know, I just feel like they're updating someone, the Scrum Master, or, you know, I did this, and this. What do you think,
I have
guys?
a controversial topic here on that specific item.
Okay, let's hear it.
When I started Scrum, I saw I think I got my Scrum certification 2011. I saw a lot of engineers. I saw a lot of just managers and people that wanted to be leaders to jump into that role.
Mhm.
And in a few places, I've seen project managers to jump in as Scrum Master.
Mhm.
I felt that when a project manager jumps into as a Scrum Master, the daily Scrum becomes more that than actual, everybody talking about what we need to work on and so forth. So is that a trend? Is this something that you've seen that's been discussed more often in the coaching and preparing people, where if you have a background in project management, you have to kind of let go of the status?
Yeah. Can I make a joke, Joe? I know this is your show, but
Sure.
can I make a
Yeah.
joke?
No, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Why do you think I have gray hair, Eduardo?
Were you a project manager at one point in time?
Recovering project manager. Thank you. I have a T-shirt to prove it. And as some of you might know, I spoke to the Florida International University alumni in project management this week, this past weekend, on behalf of transformation experts, and we actually had a brief conversation after that talk about that very subject, about how do we not turn these things into status meetings. So
Yeah, remember I said like some of these are interconnected, right? So command and control, right? That's what a traditional project manager is used to, right? Getting those, hey, where are we at? Where's this? Where's that? Because they're managing, the iron triangle, right? So in Agile, it's a different aspect, right? And then, we used to have, what did you do yesterday? What are you working on today? And do you have any blockers, impediments? And then with the new Agile guide, that's been updated to reflect it, and I will put it here. It's really talking about the goal, right? what's the sprint goal? And how did you help the team reach that Scrum goal yesterday? What will you do today that's going to help the team reach the sprint goal? And then what impediments to prevent you from reaching that Scrum goal? And I think that helps a little bit too, right? So if you're going into your stand-ups, you're not talking about the goal. I think, you're going to end up like, this picture here. People are just going to be bored, like, okay, let me get my stand-up meeting, and then I'll go off camera and I'm engaged, right? So it's always helpful to have a good engagement between your team so that they are having conversations and can talk through different things. So so right here, no defined sprint goal, can reflect that. It's not time box, so it just keeps going and going, right? There's not good facilitation, right? Status updates feel more micromanagement, right? Like if you're a team member, like, oh, I got to go and stand up and give another update, right? Or it should be more of the conversation, like, here, I'm having trouble with this. What do you guys think about that? What else? Disrupts workflow. Drop what you're doing. Attend this meeting. Different time zones. Oh, that's an issue as well. And then it could be expensive too. So think about all the team members that are in those meetings. If it's not a good, meeting, then you're just, it's just an expensive meeting. You're not really accomplishing anything. So some of the solutions, stand-up should be quick, sync to address impediments, see how the team's doing towards the goal. It's the Scrum team's meeting, right? It's not the project managers, those former project managers coming in. It's not their meeting. Determine what the blockers are, really, because that's what's going to prevent you from getting your goal. And see how the team can resolve them. Keep it short, keep it focused. 15-minute time box. You got the Elmo. If anyone doesn't know what the Elmo, it just means enough, let's move on. And then, or the 16-minute or parking lot, they can, bring it up at the end of stand up. So some of the things to kind of help things move along. So what do we think? Do you think some of these things would help you guys with this?
I have a question. I'm wondering, are team members allowed to talk to each other? Because what happens is I'm not the Scrum Master. We work with a company, they have their own Scrum Master. They talk to the board, or they address her like they're accountable to her. And I'm like, I see it as them needing to talk to each other, but
yes,
yeah.
Absolutely right. Yeah, if they're looking at the Scrum Master and looking at them and just say, I did this, did that, then it's a status meeting, right? But if they're looking at the other team members and seeing what their view is, then you have a better stand up. So you're absolutely right, Gail. Hey, look, Rick joined.
And to me, one of the tests or indications of self-organization is have the Scrum Master not show up to a stand-up and see how the team self-organizes to run it. And once they get the feel for that, they will get the feel that they are reporting to each other and not the Scrum Master. And that should be just natural team behavior. It is their meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other trick I used to do is, and this is where we're at the office. Hey, Rick, give me 1 sec. We were at the office. What I would do is in stand up, I'd go through and I'd, say, okay, I'd call on a person and then they would go through, but they would if they looked at me, I would look away. And so that they're looking back on the team. So that seemed to work, but it's up to you if you want to try it.
I think that's a pretty, I don't know if you can hear me okay, because I am international here, so I don't know how my voice is coming out. Is it coming out okay?
Yep, just fine.
Same as usual.
Yeah, wow. That's awesome. One of the things for me is the maturity level of the team, right? That's where you ultimately want to get to, but you also don't want to discourage them as they're starting out in their journey, right? How do you make sure that they feel comfortable enough to get to that next level? And sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it takes a while. Meet them where they're at. And I know we've had that in many sessions, right? So that you can kind of move them in that direction. But I love the idea of turning your back on the team so that they know that, hey, it's all about you guys figuring it out together. So that was a great suggestion, Joe. The question is when, and when is that a good proper time to kind of showcase that? Good job, Joe.
Yep.
What
Yeah, I
about
would
remote
say-
team?
So
What
if I-
about remote teams? Like, how do you move them away from that? Because it's so easy with remote to throw up that board and to say, go through line by line, each story. You know, that's what's been happening since we're all remote now.
So what do you think? What are you guys experiencing doing this remote stand up? Do your team members, they turn off their cameras? Do they, you know, sometimes you'll call on a team member and then they're like, you know, you're waiting 5 minutes, like, oh, sorry, I was on mute. They weren't engaged, were they?
Right. So one of the things that I like to try, that I've tried lately, is when we were in person, right? I want to try to create the connectedness. So I would do that with one of the speaking balls, and I remember that from Rick. There was a retro that he had done one time, and we had this ball that we would toss around. So that worked. That worked very well.
Yep.
When we were in person. And what I would do is I would actually, when we would come to the meeting, obviously I wanted to kind of step away, but they were very early on in the journey. So I would come in and share with them exactly what I was doing with the ball and what was going to happen with that ball. And then I would actually toss it, right, underhand toss to someone, and that would go ahead and get our meetings started. And then eventually what I began to do, instead of turning my back, I would actually just walk out of, just kind of step back out of the circle and allow them to toss it back and forth one to another. And what I found was that they were actually speaking to one another, right, as they were sharing with that particular ball. Oh, I was able to do this, and they would toss to the next person who maybe had something to add to that. And then virtually was a little bit more difficult, but it was still the same concept of just being able to come in, kind of have their guards come down, by a quick outside type conversation, and then jumping directly into, our 15 minutes. But again, that was a little bit more difficult trying to kind of help train. But that's kind of been my thought process, is to lead by example, and then, like what people are saying, step away, and then allow them in their self-organization, right, to showcase.
Yeah, get them started. Like if it's a brand new team, get them started, get them start talking to each other. And then, like I said, because they're probably used to giving you the update, but again, slowly turn away, or like you said, throw the ball up, get them interactive, remote, just, maybe use some other tools, some other ideas to help them get them going. And
Does anybody have a quick,
if there's feeling like
tool?
there's, good question.
Does anybody have a quick method they've used remotely to sort of replace the ball concept? It's a great idea, Walter, but yeah, I'd like to hear any remote implementations of this, if anybody's tried it.
A couple of things I've done. We create channels. So let's say if you're using Teams or some other tool, right? So we encourage the team to continuously have conversations, even if they are not only at the Scrum meeting, right? The daily Scrum or any of the sprint meetings that we agree on the ceremonies. So we see the engagement going up virtually by encouraging team members to just, have sometimes, let's discuss bugs. They have a channel just for bugs. Let's discuss the deployments, the builds, or, outstanding items with the PO. So they're all in those teams, but they separate it by subject, and they start engaging themselves. And then you see, a lot of interactions and iterations going back and forth much faster. So when they come to the ceremonies, most of the conversations already happened, and it's just a okay, so what are the roadblocks? So it becomes more efficient by talking about the roadblocks in the daily scrum.
Yep. And then, like I said, I try to connect these things, and as I'm having more conversations with you guys, I'm having other thoughts. So I wonder if the psychological safety, if that's not there, if the stand-ups don't go smooth, right? Because maybe they're afraid of, like maybe they're struggling, but they don't want to bring up a blocker, right?
So,
Or
Joe,
impediment.
one of the things that I also tried, like when doing stand-ups remotely, is kind of follow up to what Walter was saying, right? Most of the time is the team is kind of working on something and it is kind of connected, and especially if they're doing any kind of like peer programming or something like that. So when we come to these meetings, it's basically kind of like, hey, Joe, thank you for helping me with this, and then like turn around and say, Bob, I'm having a little struggle with that. Can you help me with it? So have them kind of bring the blockers and see if they feel comfortable enough to approach one of the team members to see if they can help them with a blocker. And that kind of, starts a dialogue and it goes round circle from that.
Yeah, I think as team members start talking to each other, they start trusting each other, and they start collaborating, and then they'll start to say like, oh, I have a problem. Hey, Mike, can you help me with this? Right. And then so you get some of that in the stand-ups, right? Like, okay, let's tag it for the end or wherever you do it. And let's have that discussion so that we can figure. And then again, it ties back to the sprint goal, right? So it's all kind of connected.
What's weird, Joe, is that they sometimes have to have that expectation that that's what it looks like, right? Because you're there in the stand-up and you're like, what? How am I supposed to be working in this new way of working, right? But if you can showcase that and say, this is what it looks like. I've had an opportunity, and I don't know if everybody else have taken a team to see other teams, right? That way they're observing and they're like, wow, these guys are actually holding each other accountable. They're actually talking a little bit, they're asking for help. That kind of eases them out. And then earlier there was a question related to the ball tossing and what could be an alternative way. Simple way would be just call on each other. Like, okay, one person kicks it off, the scrum master says, okay, this is where the baton is being passed on to, and whoever's next needs to call on the next person. So they get to call. What's cool about that, Joe, and as well, is that at least everyone's active at this time, right? It's not like,
they're
I'm
like,
just thinking
I'm
of
gonna
my
be called
status.
next. Yeah.
Correct. So I need to be active and I need to be ready. But it does take time.
Yeah, like you said, the maturity of the team, as the team goes through it more, they're going to call out things, and it's going to be less of this. So maybe this topic is really for teams just starting out. As they mature, I think there's less of this.
Yeah, Joe, I think if the team does not realize why they're doing stand-up, they're, if they know the why, they're more invested in it.
Yep. All right. Any other discussion points on this one? We've gotten through 3. So we got 8. All right, so let's move on to our next subject. All right, so just to recap, we talked about command and control, talked about a non-safe environment. We talked about the daily stand-up being a status meeting. Now we're looking at the Scrum team ignoring values and principles. You guys had experience with this one? Does everybody know what these are? Everyone familiar with it? Do you work with your teams with these as you come up with problems? What do we think? So maybe some of the questions like this one came up, maybe it's certain situations that can reflect, like I think Bob, you were saying, when we were talking about this one over here, command and control, you were saying, well, what about what was it? No.
It was individuals and interactions over
Yeah.
processes and tools.
Yeah.
That's a value, agile value. Yeah.
Yep. This one here. I was trying to remember, but
Yeah.
that's a good point. So maybe certain team members, you know, they just say, you know, I don't necessarily agreeing with, you know, processes or in tools over, you know, good working documentation or good software. So I don't feel really good with that one. So I may deny it.
And
So
that the individuals and interactions fit nicely with the face-to-face communications principle. So it's all these, as you were saying, all this we're talking about is interrelated, and it's for a reason. I mean, this has been well thought out. And again, I don't think it hurts to review these once or twice a year with the team. Just take 5 minutes, review the principles, review the values.
I would even say more often than that, right? Because it's kind of forget about it, right? Maybe every now and again, bring it up in a retro. You know, this is what the Scrum values are, you know, and what we, you know, agree to as a team, you know, along with your working agreements. And then, you know, if you do have a conflict or someone that's not, you know, agree with some of these, maybe some of the questions that you can ask, you know, do these principles matter to you? How much do they matter to you? How does it affect you? Like if we take an example, responding to change over following a plan, right? Some people are used to following the plan, right? I need the plan. Where's the plan? You heard that? So, you know, that could be an issue, right? Especially when we're talking about command and control. All right. So
Joe,
helping. Yeah, go ahead, Walter.
yeah, one of the things that I've tried recently when I have any of my ceremonies is and now we're back in the office where I'm located. So when they come into my room, on that board, on that whiteboard is written out what I call kind of a prime directive. I'd like for them to either speak on that or to write it down on stickies. But one of those prime directives that I have up there is just the statement, which is normally going to be either one of those values or one of those 12 principles. And that is my way of trying to keep it before them, you know, of you know, how we are to operate and maneuver as a Scrum team. And that's one of the things that I try.
Yeah, that's a great idea, right? Kind of helps them say, okay, that's a reminder, you know, it's right there and available for me.
I like that idea, actually, Walter. And how often do you change the prime directive?
I change it every time that we meet. It will always be something different. And what they have seen, they've kind of caught on. They're like, oh, well, we've seen this one before, right? And it's just kind of that constant reminder of again, how we should be maneuvering, right? To, you know, to understand that it is better to, you know, address each other face to face, or to make sure that we are trying to deliver value early and often, right? So I think the more we can keep it in front of them, they begin to learn it. So there was that idea of, I think somebody had mentioned, do they forget them or do they ignore them, right? And sometimes I think it's probably a combination of both. And I think us as Scrum Masters, right, we're here to protect that process. So we're here we have to remind them of this process that we're protecting, I think.
Right, as a good Scrum Master, I mean, you own this stuff, right? And it's up to you to help your teams understand it and reflect on it. Have you guys ever seen the Agile onion?
I've seen the grilled Agile onion.
Grilled.
Yeah, grilled. Grilled is when there's pre-existing technical debt and there's brand new technical debt being layered into it.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
It will destroy that onion every time in a matter of months. And
yeah, I haven't seen that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's wow. It doesn't matter what position you hold, outside consultant, inside entry-level guy. It is the single hardest thing to get the client to adjust, to realize that that particular issue is a continuous focus point. You have to address it. Some people just, they will not.
Yep. Yeah, so if we look at this, not the grilled one, but this one, it goes from tools and processes to practices to principles to values to mindset, right? Where it's most, least visible, most powerful, the mindset, right? At the beginning is more visible, but less powerful. So something you guys can take a look at. So as a community, these are some of the things that we talked about with regards to this. So, Scrum team ignoring the values and principles, try to find out the root cause of it. What makes you think that they're, ignoring that or things are not working. So if you come across that, maybe have a discussion with your team members or a particular team member and see why that's an issue. Again, do the Agile principles and values matter to you? Answer the why. Talk about that before the commitment. As a developer, why should I trust you? Goes back to trust. As team members, what the root cause is, like we talked about. Customers matters, the business matters, right? So help the team members understand that customers are extremely important. So we can have good customer interaction within our development process, then we're going to be more successful. What can you take action on? Intrinsic motivation to improve your state of being. It's not all about you. Put a little thing here for that. Scrum Master can remove a team member to protect the team. If that does happen, I think Bob, you mentioned that. Working agreement, we talked about that. Why are we acting this way? Gray areas, how do we respond? Cool versus not cool. A working agreement can be, ever evolving. It's not static. Talk about the sprint goal. It's complex. Everyone has a different objective. Maybe we need to find out what those are and then see if we can negotiate something that works for the team to be self-organized. Product owner, decision making, are they helping the team share the vision? Is there a roadmap? What's the culture? How are things, how are other people acting with each other? How are other teams acting with each other? And emotional intelligence, right? Having that, knowing what's going on with that person might help explain why team members are not using the values. So emotional intelligence is always key. And then know your team, know your customer. Make sense? So that's the feedback we got from the community regarding this particular subject. We have time for one more. So we'll get to the top 5. Let's look at the next one. Ooh, skipping retrospectives. Have you had team members skipping retrospectives and why? Anybody want to share a story?
I don't see any, my team, at least the team that I'm working for, they don't see any outcomes. They do, it's a lot of them complaining, and then the management takes whatever it is and they go hide somewhere and nothing ever comes out of it. So there's just no results.
So, okay. So you said management. So management's in your retrospectives?
Yes, and then whatever the team says, they're like, we'll take care of it, and they put it on a different board, and then they forget about it.
Yeah. And why would that be a problem to a team member?
Because it's they don't see any purpose for the meeting after a certain point, right? It's gonna go up, we're gonna complain, management will do something, they'll take it right down what everybody says, and they'll go somewhere, and you don't see any improvements. They don't see any, it's bad enough the management's doing it, but it'd be different if there's actually some improvements.
Yeah, so if you're a team member and you go to a retrospect and you say you feel it's a safe environment, right? And you say, I this, and this, and then you go to the next sprint and like, hey, well, what happened to the thing I said last week? Oh, yeah, we're getting to that. Okay, what did I say about the other last time? Yeah, we'll do that, but it never goes anywhere. So I would like, okay, I'm not gonna tell you it's a complete waste of time. I'm not gonna even go to the retrospective because, you know, it's not, there's no benefit for me or for the team. Danny, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, I have two insights about that. One of them is when the Scrum Master leads the retrospective meeting, I recommend they schedule different checkpoints during the next 2 weeks in order to double check that the fixes, you see, we have good, bad fixes and idea, that the fixes are actually executed, because it's not only responsibility of the team to improve, it's not only the responsibility of the members to say, okay, we do everything better. So the Scrum Master must check that that is actually happening. I know sometimes we have priority where we can say, okay, we have many bad things to fix. Let's to prioritize 3 of them and focus only on that one. But what about the rest? The rest, if they are not fixed during the time, they will grow more and more and get worse. Another insight that I have is I was working with a team that had a lot of pending technical debts. And also improvement, not only bugs or defects. So, and the solution that they decided was to divide the team, like 3 developers in production support and the rest of developer working only on features. And they decided to skip retrospective for the production support meetings. Why? And I was talking to them during the time, because I like people like start like putting in practice things and learn from it and learn from mistakes, that most of the error that we were receiving in production support can be actually resolved during the development process of the feature team. It's like, okay, let me delegate this and we can fix that later. And of course, the production support team has to fix it. The idea is to reduce risk as much as possible, to reduce bugs and defects, but it's not a good idea to skip the retrospective for those other teams. So actually dividing the team, I don't think is productive, because there is miscommunication between them, and there is no transparency on when they want to say something. The thing that I like as a Scrum Master is to, we always said, 70% for capability and new features and 30% for contingency inside the same sprint, and everyone work together fixing and building.
Yep. Yeah, some good points. So you made a lot of good points there. And we're going to kind of talk about those as well, right? So, you know, one of the things that you mentioned, Denny, okay, it's up to the Scrum Master to take these things and put them somewhere so that we can say, okay, let's not ignore these. Anybody have an idea of what that could be? Will they take the items that come out of a retrospective? Where can those go so that the team can go back and check to see if those things are being completed or not?
So
we talked about it earlier.
In a retrospective, to me, you should not have more than maybe 3 or 4 action items, and you should have formal action items as part of your retrospective. These are the things we're going to do. And the retrospective is just before your iteration planning. So out of the retrospective comes the action items. Out of your iteration planning comes your iteration goals. So at least 2 times, if you have 2-week iterations, 2 times during each week of the iteration, you should review with the team the action items and see the progress being made and the iteration goals. Well, the iteration goals should be talked about during every stand-up, but at least twice a week, review the action items from the previous retrospective and make sure progress is being made. But you should have formal action items from each retrospective.
perspective.
Yep, thank you, Bob. Anybody else want to add to that? So generally what I do is retrospective items, right? Some of them, yes, like Bob's saying, could go and be built into a sprint depending on what it is. Also, if it's more of a team process or team collaboration thing, I build it into the working agreement. Get sign off from the team. This is what we talked about. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to improve upon. We made it part of our working agreement, and then now it becomes actionable, right? And we can hold each other accountable. So some of the reasons why, team members may be skipping retros, again, not having a safe environment, that psychological safety we talked about earlier, right? You should be celebrating success. It's not just, like you said, a complaint session. Refer to the Scrum values, inspect and adapt, going into the next sprint. How do you know if you're doing good, bad, or how to improve? If team members are not attending, you don't know that. You don't know if you're improving. You're not having that conversation. So you could have issues with trust as well. Prime directive, regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe everyone did their best job they could, given for what they knew at the time, their skills, their abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. I like this one, right? Prime directive, this is how we improve, calling the silent ones. Maybe some icebreakers to help if you're in a retro. Maybe begin with an icebreaker, kind of lighten the mood up, make it fun so it's not mundane. Add items to be improved upon and to review to determine if they need to be added. Working agreement, we talked about that. Using motivational images on the board to keep things interesting. I do this personally. I like to throw, like things that we want to work on. So I'll put some successful, like success quotes or, improvement, whether it be Kanban or something like that, just to kind of keep the board a little more interesting. Highlight the good stuff, show the benefits, and how we could be better. If the team feels action items out of the retro are not being acted on, they will not understand the value of the retro, which is what we mentioned earlier. So another thing that I've seen is, different methods, different retro items to keep things fun. This is a sailboat thing. You talk about risk, goals, what slows us down, what moves us forward, what things we want to improve upon. So there's tons of stuff on how to make the retros a little more interesting that you can take a look at. And again, this is kind of help you prepare for a retro, set the stage, gather data, generate insights, decide what to do, close out the retrospective. So we got through, what, 5? It's not bad. I think we're reaching our closeout time. Anybody have any questions on the retrospect? Skipping that.
Not
Okay.
questions, but Dennis put in the chat, celebrate failures too. Spotify culture, detect failures, make the results more successful. Avoid bad things, and avoid bad things happen again. Those failures are good opportunities to showcase lessons learned. And we have a nice storytelling from Sherry. Pretty much something really lame from my retrospective. So, yeah, comments.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Nilu. So we got through 5 of them today. I did have a couple more to go through, but I guess, Nilu, if we want to share the board, you guys can do that. We'll talk a little bit more on Saturday sessions, and then we'll probably have an upcoming, maybe a 3rd round, and we'll keep going at it.
Absolutely.
A lot of good conversation on it. So.
No worries. I'm gonna go ahead and share the board with you in a second.